Sometimes the things nobody wants are the things that hold the world together. A 70-year-old man stands in the dust of a ruined ranch he just bought for $1. No running water. No electricity. No walls on half the buildings. Behind him, his wife holds a bag of groceries that cost more than the land. They were evicted 3 weeks ago. Their apartment demolished for luxury condos. Nobody offered them a place. Nobody called. So they came here, to a piece of dirt the county couldn't give away. But on that first night, something happens. A wounded dog limps out of the brush. Then a horse with a broken leg. Then another. Then 6 more. Animals nobody wanted, arriving at a place nobody wanted, owned by 2 people nobody wanted. Ray, a retired veterinarian, kneels beside the dog. His hands are shaking, but they remember what to do. What happens when 2 forgotten people decide to stop waiting for the world to remember them? If the story moves you, follow for the rest. The next morning, Ray woke up on the floor of a house that didn't deserve to be called one. The roof had holes. The walls had gaps wide enough to slide a hand through. The front door was just a frame. No door, just the frame. Dolores was already up. She'd been up since before dawn, which is the way she'd always been. 42 years of marriage, and Ray couldn't remember a single morning where he beat her out of bed. Not one. She had a notebook in her hand and a pencil behind her ear, and she was walking the property like she was grading a student's homework, marking things down, making lists. "We have 1 cooler," she said without looking up. 14 cans of beans, 6 cans of corn, a bag of rice, 2 sleeping bags, and a car with a quarter tank of gas. Ray sat up. His back screamed at him. 70 years old and sleeping on a wooden floor will do that. He looked outside through the gap where a window used to be. 7 animals were on the property. The dog from last night, a horse with a badly swollen front leg, 3 cats, and 2 more dogs that must have shown up while they slept. "Where are they coming from?" he asked. Dolores didn't answer. She was already outside, setting up a feeding station. She used hubcaps from a rusted truck behind the barn as bowls, poured water from a jug they'd brought, opened 2 cans of beans and split them between the dogs. Now here's the thing about Ray. He wasn't just any retiree. He'd been a veterinarian for 38 years. Large animal, small animal didn't matter. He'd delivered calves in snowstorms. He'd operated on a dog on someone's kitchen table at 2 in the morning. When he retired, he kept one thing. His old veterinary bag. Battered brown leather. Stitched up twice. Half the tools inside were older than some of the people he'd worked with. Dolores told him to sell it. He said no. It was the only time in 42 years he'd refused her on anything, and she never brought it up again. He went to the truck, opened the tailgate. The bag was right where he'd put it, wedged between a box of clothes and a folded lawn chair. He unzipped it. Some of the supplies had expired 3 years ago. Didn't matter. He knelt beside the dog from last night. The wound on its side was ugly, deep, infected already, but his hands knew what to do. They'd always known. While he worked, Dolores walked further out, past the barn, past the collapsed fence line. She found something buried under a tangle of mesquite brush. A hand pump well, old, iron, rusted almost solid. She grabbed the handle and pushed. Nothing. Pushed again. A groan. Then brown water. She kept pumping. The brown turned amber, then clear. She called Ray over. He tasted it. Clean. "That's our water," she said. Later that afternoon, a truck slowed down on the road. A man leaned out the window, older, sunburned. He looked at the 2 of them, then at the animals, then back at them. "You the ones who bought this place?" Ray nodded. The man shook his head. "Last owner died alone in that house. Nobody found him for 11 days. He paused. "You won't last a month." Dolores waved, said nothing, went back to feeding the cats. By the end of the first week, 14 animals were on the property. Dogs. cats, 2 more horses, a goat with 1 ear. They just kept showing up. And that's when Ray started paying attention. He walked the road in both directions, found tire tracks, found crates, found a collar with no tags tossed in a ditch. Somebody had been dumping animals on this road for years. This wasn't random. This was a dumping ground. And now Ray and Dolores were sitting right in the middle of it. 3 months passed. And believe me, those 3 months were hard in ways that don't fit neatly into a sentence. The heat alone could kill you. West Texas in summer is not a place for people who want comfort. It's a place for people who have no other choice. But they stayed. They built shelters out of scrap wood from the collapsed barn. Ray dragged corrugated tin from a dump site 2 miles down the road and nailed it over the worst holes in the house. Dolores planted a garden. Tomatoes, peppers, squash. She'd been a schoolteacher for 35 years, and she approached that garden the same way she approached a classroom. With patience, a schedule, and absolutely no tolerance for failure. 26 animals now. Dogs mostly, but also horses, cats, the 1-eared goat, a pig that wandered in from somewhere, and a pair of ducks that just decided this was home. Ray treated what he could. Set broken legs, cleaned wounds, pulled teeth. Dolores kept them fed. The money was almost gone. What little they had left went to animal feed. They ate what the garden gave them and didn't complain. Then one night, something happened that changed everything. Ray was sitting on the porch, if you could call it a porch. It was more of a leaning platform with a view. The sun had gone down maybe an hour before. He heard something in the brush. Slow, dragging. A coyote pulled itself out of the dark and onto the bottom step. His right rear leg was shattered, bone visible through the fur. The animal was panting, shaking, looking straight at Ray like it knew exactly who he was. Now get this. A wild coyote is dangerous. Hurt or not. You don't touch a wild coyote. You call animal control. That's what you do. But Ray knew what calling animal control meant. It meant the county shows up. The county shows up and sees 26 animals on a property with no permits. No running water certification. No septic. No zoning approval. They'd shut him down in a week. So Ray made a choice. He went inside, got his bag, came back out, looked at Dolores, who was standing in the doorway holding a flashlight. "Hold the light steady," he said. He operated on that coyote right there on the kitchen table. A 70-year-old man performing surgery on a wild animal by flashlight in a house with no electricity. Dolores held the coyote down with both hands and a dish towel. Ray worked for over an hour, cleaned the wound, set the bone, stitched it closed, used supplies that had expired in 2019. The coyote survived. Ray named it Dollar, after what they paid for the ranch. What Ray and Dolores didn't know was that someone was watching. A teenager named Marco lived about a mile down the road. He'd been sneaking over to the ranch for weeks, watching the animals, watching Ray work. That night, he stood outside the window with his phone and filmed the entire surgery. Every minute of it. He posted it the next morning. Didn't tell anyone. Didn't ask permission. Just uploaded it with the title, 70-year-old vet saves coyote by flashlight on a $1 ranch. Within 48 hours, that video had 2.3 million views. Ray and Dolores didn't know. They didn't have internet. They didn't have a phone that connected to anything. The morning after the surgery, Dolores sat on the porch. Dollar the coyote slept beside the 3-legged dog they'd taken in the second week. The sun was warm. The wind had settled. For the first time in months, nothing was breaking. Nothing was bleeding. Nothing was falling down. "I think we're going to be okay," Dolores said. Ray smiled. And for the first time since they'd arrived, he believed her. 3 days later, a white truck pulled up the dirt road and stopped at the ranch gate. A man in a county uniform stepped out holding a clipboard. He didn't wave. He didn't smile. He walked straight to Ray, who was wrapping a bandage around a dog's front paw, and he said 5 words that hit like a brick wall. "You're in violation. All of it." Now here's where the whole thing shifts. Because up until this moment, Ray and Dolores had been fighting one enemy. Poverty. They were broke, old, and living on a piece of land that nobody wanted. That was hard enough. But this was different. This wasn't the land fighting back. This was the system. The county officer explained it in a voice that was calm, flat, and completely without sympathy. The viral video had reached the county planning office. An unlicensed individual performing surgery on a wild animal. On a property with no permits. No approved water system. No septic certification. No zoning approval for animal habitation. No fire safety clearance. The list went on. He red-tagged the property. Nailed the violation notice right to the gate post. They had 30 days to comply with every item on the list or vacate. All animals were to be removed or surrendered to county animal control. Ray stood there holding the bandage he'd been wrapping. The dog licked his hand. He didn't say anything. But while the county was shutting them down, something else was happening. The video kept spreading. And with it came money. Envelopes started arriving at the post office in town. Cash, checks, money orders. A woman in Germany sent $5,000. A family in Japan sent a handwritten letter and $300 in an envelope decorated with stickers. Donations poured in from 32 countries. But here's the problem. Money can't fix a timeline. The violations weren't about money. They were about permits, inspections, engineering reports, zoning reclassification. That takes months, sometimes years. They had 30 days. Ray drove to the county office, sat in a plastic chair for 3 hours, filled out forms, asked for an exemption, a temporary variance, anything. The clerk was sympathetic. She really was. But the answer was no. The code is the code. A local news crew showed up at the ranch 2 days later. Ray didn't want to talk. He walked away from the camera. But Dolores didn't. She stood in front of that red-tagged gate with 26 animals behind her, and she said something that would end up on the national news that night. We're not asking for permission to be kind. We're asking why kindness needs a permit. That quote went everywhere. Cable news, print, online, every platform. The governor's office called the county. Not to overrule anything. Not yet. Just to ask questions. What's happening out there? Who are these people? What exactly are the violations? The county didn't back down. They doubled down. Moved the deadline up. 21 days. That night, Ray walked the property. Counted every animal. 47. He stopped at the gate. Looked at the red tag. Then he looked back at the ranch. At the shelters he'd built with his own hands. At the garden Dolores had grown from nothing. At 47 animals that had nowhere else to go. He didn't have anywhere to take them. He wasn't going to call animal control. And he was not going to put them back on that road where nobody wanted them. Not a single one. Day 19. 2 days left. Ray hadn't slept more than 3 hours a night in a week. Dolores kept the routine going. Fed the animals at 6. Cleaned the shelters at 8. Checked the garden at noon. She moved through each day like the deadline didn't exist. But her hands shook when she thought Ray wasn't looking. Then the first car showed up. A van, actually, from Texas A&M. 12 veterinary students. They'd seen the video. They'd read about the violations. They didn't call ahead. They just drove 4 hours and showed up with tools, lumber, fencing, and a licensed contractor who'd volunteered his time. They started building. Proper fencing around the animal areas. A real water line from the well to the house and the shelters. A basic septic system. Electrical wiring run from a generator. They worked 16 hours a day. The students slept in their van. The contractor slept in his truck. Meanwhile, the donations kept coming. The total had passed $340,000. From 32 countries. People who had never met Ray and Dolores. People who had never seen the ranch. People who just watched a video of a 70-year-old man saving a coyote by flashlight and decided that mattered. But the contractor told Ray the truth. He needed at least 5 more days past the deadline to finish the work and pass inspection. At least 5. Day 20. Ray called the county. Asked for an extension. 5 days. Just 5. The answer was no. That night, Ray sat on the porch. Dolores sat beside him. Neither of them said a word. Dollar the coyote lay at their feet. The three-legged dog was curled up against Ray's boots. Somewhere in the dark, a horse exhaled. A cat moved across the tin roof. 47 animals. 2 people. 2 days. Day 21. Morning. The sun came up the way it always did. Slow. Orange. Indifferent. 3 county vehicles pulled up the dirt road. Behind them 2 animal control trucks. White. Unmarked. The kind with the metal cages in the back. Ray stood at the gate. Dolores stood beside him. Behind them, the 12 veterinary students stood in a line. The contractor stood with his arms crossed. But behind the county trucks, something else appeared. Cars. One after another. 40 of them. Volunteers. Supporters. People who had driven from 4 different states. They parked along the road in both directions. They got out. Some had signs. Some had cameras. Most had nothing. They just stood there. The county officer stepped out of his vehicle. He was the same man from 3 weeks ago. Same clipboard. Same flat expression. He looked at the crowd. Looked at the cameras. Looked at Ray. Then his phone rang. He answered it. Listened. Didn't speak. Listened for a long time. Then he hung up. He walked to Ray. Reached into his truck. Pulled out a single sheet of paper. Handed it over. The governor had issued an executive order. A temporary injunction halting the removal of any animals from the property. A special zoning exemption pending full review. And a formal request to the county to work with Ray and Dolores. Not against them. If this story has meant something to you, now's the time to subscribe. We've got more stories like this one, and they only reach you if you're here. Ray's hands shook when he took the letter. Not from fear this time. Not from exhaustion. From something he hadn't felt in a long time. Dolores took the paper from his hands. She read it out loud. Her voice didn't shake. It never did. She read every word to the crowd, to the students, to the county officer, and to 47 animals who had no idea what any of it meant but stayed quiet anyway. Like they understood something bigger was happening. The county officer nodded. Got back in his truck. Drove away. The animal control trucks followed. Nobody cheered. Nobody clapped. People just stood there. Some of them were crying. Ray sat down on the ground right where he was standing. Dolores put her hand on his shoulder. Dollar the coyote limped over and lay down beside him. 3 years later, you wouldn't recognize the place. The ranch had proper buildings. A veterinary training clinic with clean floors and running water and equipment donated from 3 universities. Housing units. 6 of them. Small, simple, but solid. Built by volunteers over the course of 18 months. The property that Ray bought for $1 was appraised at $4.2 million. He got offers. Developers. Investors. A media company that wanted to turn the ranch into a reality show. He said no to every single one. Dolores didn't even bother reading the letters. She used them to start the fire pit. 12 elderly couples lived on the ranch now. All of them volunteers. They cooked, cleaned, maintained the shelters, worked the garden, and took care of the animals in exchange for housing. Every single one of them had been in a situation like Ray and Dolores. Retired. Alone. Pushed out. Forgotten. One couple had been living in their car for 6 months before they found the ranch. Another had been separated by a shelter system that didn't allow couples. They were together again now. On the porch every evening. The veterinary program was officially accredited. Students rotated through every semester. They came from Texas A&M, from Colorado State, from Cornell. They learned things in that clinic they couldn't learn anywhere else. How to treat animals with no budget. How to improvise. How to care when the system says stop. Dollar the coyote was still alive. Limped when it rained. Slept on Ray's boots every single night. Wouldn't sleep anywhere else. Ray tried once to put a dog bed next to his chair. Dollar ignored it. Went straight for the boots. Marco, the teenager who filmed the video that started everything, was now a first-year veterinary student at Texas A&M. Ray wrote his recommendation letter. It was 1 page. It said, "This young man saw something worth recording when nobody else was looking. That's the most important skill a veterinarian can have. Not the hands, the eyes. One afternoon, a reporter came to the ranch. National outlet, camera crew, sound equipment, the whole thing. She walked the property with Dolores, saw the clinic, saw the housing units, saw the animals. 47 of them still. Some had passed. New ones had arrived. The number stayed the same somehow, like the land had decided that was the right amount. The reporter asked the question everyone asked. What's the secret? Dolores stopped walking. They were standing near the pasture fence. Compass, the blind horse, was there. Compass had arrived a year after the governor's letter. Someone had abandoned her on a highway, both eyes damaged beyond repair. She couldn't see a thing, but she could hear Dolores's voice from 200 yards away and would walk straight to her. Every time, Dolores held out her hand. Compass lowered her head and ate grain from her open palm. Nearby, the three-legged dog was asleep on Ray's boots. On the porch of the main building, a building that didn't have walls 2 years ago, 6 elderly volunteers sat in lawn chairs, laughing about something. The sound carried across the property. Dolores looked at the reporter. Nobody wanted this land, she said. Nobody wanted these animals. Nobody wanted us. She paused, watched Compass chew. Turns out, the things nobody wants are the things that need each other most. The reporter asked a few more questions. Dolores answered them. Then she went back to feeding the horses. That evening, Ray walked the property the way he always did. Slow, checking fences, checking shelters, checking animals. He passed the clinic and stopped. On the wall inside, framed behind glass, was the auction receipt. Crumpled, stained, $1. He stood there for a minute, thought about the night they arrived. 2 sleeping bags, a cooler, a car with a quarter tank of gas, 7 animals in the dark. Now there were 47 animals, 12 families, clinic, the future. He walked to the gate. The same gate the county officer had red-tagged 3 years ago. The tag was gone. Someone had painted a sign over it. Hand-lettered, blue paint on white wood. Welcome to the Dollar Ranch. Everything here was unwanted. Everything here matters. Ray stood there for a long time. The sun was going down. The sky turned orange, then deep red, then purple. Dolores came up beside him, took his hand. They stood there together, the way they'd stood together for 45 years. Through the apartment, through the eviction, through the dust and the coyote and the red tag and the letter from the governor. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. The things nobody wants. The things that hold the world together. Behind them, a blind horse ate from an empty hand. A coyote slept on a pair of worn boots. And 6 old people laughed on a porch that didn't exist 2 years ago. That's the Dollar Ranch. And it's still standing.